Good evening, my viewers. Welcome to another edition of Essential Inspirational Highlights. My listeners, I want you to reflect on this for a moment. Are you more concerned about what other people think of you rather than being concerned about your own well being? Are you continuously upgrading your material possessions to fit in with the newest and hottest trends? Do you find yourself craving to have what other individuals are buying? Are you trying to impress others? Do you have a habit of showing off your success? Are you spending your money frivolously and living beyond your means? My listeners, you may have the syndrome called keeping up with the Joneses, or you may know someone with this syndrome. Don't despair, my listeners. You will learn more about this syndrome, its impact, and how to manage it. The scripture lesson text for this evening is Philippians, the 4th chapter and 11th verse, and Hebrews, the 13th chapter and the 5th verse. Beginning with Philippians, the 4th chapter, 11th verse reads, "Not that I speak in respect of want, for I have learned in whatsoever state I am, therewith to be content." In Hebrews, the 13th chapter and the 5th verse reads, "Let your conversation be without covetousness, and be content with such things as ye have. For he hath said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee." And the topic for this evening is keep your eyes off the Joneses. Let me repeat that subject again. Keep your eyes off the Joneses. My listeners, from the scripture lesson text, both Apostle Paul and the author of Hebrews are telling us that we should be content in whatever circumstances that we are in, no matter how much or little you have. Make the best of it. Now, from my text on this evening, my listeners, we need to keep our eyes off the Joneses and appreciate what we have. So, where did the saying, keeping up with the Joneses, come from? What does it mean? Who are the Joneses? Thank you for asking, my listeners. Find out about the history of keeping up with the Joneses, the origin. Keeping up with the Joneses, my viewers, is a phrase that originated in a comic strip called Keeping Up with the Joneses. It was created by Arthur R. Pop-Moment in 1913. The comic strip ran until 1940. My viewers, the comic strip portrayed the McGinnis family, who were social climbers. They struggled to keep up with their neighbors, the Joneses. In the comic strip, the Joneses were unseen characters that were spoken of but never shown. However, the Joneses' influence was impressive in the storylines. The phrase, keeping up with the Joneses, is still popular until this day. And by the way, my listeners, that was a Jones family, but this was not the origin. I already gave you the origin with the comic strip, but there was an actually family named the Jones family, and this was back in the 1850s. And the actual Jones family, who they built a 7,690 square foot mansion in Rhinebeck, New York. And that was around 1853. It was a summer vacation spot for wealthy families from New York City. It was the grandest house overlooking the Hudson River with 24 rooms, tennis courts, boats, and carriage houses. It was believed that after this mansion was built, it prompted a building boom. Wealthy neighbors enlarged and remodeled their homes to keep up with the Joneses, with this particular family. Like I said, their name happened to be Jones. So, my listeners, who are your Joneses? The Joneses are not limited to just your neighbors. There are people that you see on a regular basis. These individuals could be your friends, relatives, co-workers, church members, people that you associate with in professional organizations or in your social circle. So what does it mean, keeping up with the Joneses? So listeners, when you hear the phrase, keeping up with the Joneses, it means the way individuals compare themselves to a neighbor, our friends, relatives, and strive to accumulate the same material possessions, social class, and society wealth. To make it plain, it's striving to match your neighbors in spending and social standing. It's pressure to keep up with your neighbor's wealth, social status, etc. A person is trying to have or attain the lifestyle of what their neighbor has. For example, if your neighbor or friend buys a new 2023 Cadillac Escalade, then to keep up with the Joneses means you would have to buy an equally expensive car, like I'm going to say a new Range Rover. And the neighbor is looked upon as being the benchmark or a standard representing success. And if you're not keeping up, then you are left behind and looked upon as being inferior. My listeners, people want to be socially accepted. We're living in a society where people want to fit in and not stick out like a sore thumb. So many individuals want other folks to know that they can be just like them, like the Joneses. My listeners, who wants to be seen as an outcast with their friends? Individuals want others to respect them. They want to rub shoulders with people who are seen in their eyes as big shots, big wheels, and high society. My listeners, it's like joining a social club. Some people put on a big front and appear that they are well off financially and important. They are in debt, trying to outdo and impress their neighbors and friends with their possessions. These individuals will buy all sorts of possessions based on the trends and styles set by, guess who? The Joneses, who are the neighbors, by the way. And I'll give you some examples. Some examples of purchasing big houses, buying expensive vehicles, spending money on high-end designer clothes, taking extravagant vacations, dining out at pricey restaurants, constantly upgrading their material possessions to the latest trends, and the list goes on. And I have a personal example that I would like to share. Years ago, I was working part-time. And I remember I came to work one day. I had beautiful gold chains, and I had a new designer bag. Well, a couple of months later, I would say maybe like 2 months later, I noticed my coworker, and she was working part-time as well too. I noticed my coworker came in, and she had beautiful gold chains. Well, actually, she had more gold chains than I had, and she had the same designer bag that, of course, that I had. And on that day that I saw her, she came into my office and she said, "Janie, can I use your telephone?" I said, "Sure." Well, while she was on the telephone, I just overheard her. She was calling up her creditors. She was behind on her payments. And for some reason, she didn't have enough money to pay her bills. So when she hung up the phone, she looked at me and she said, Janie, how did you afford those gold chains? And how did you afford that designer bag? And I told her, well, I'm gonna make up a name. Uh, Louis, Lucy. Well, first of all, I didn't buy the gold chains. My mother bought these gold chains for my Christmas present. And this Dooney bag, and that at that particular time, that was a hot bag. This particular model bag, that style bag, it was a hot bag, and it was expensive. And I said my sister bought the bag as well for my Christmas present. I didn't buy anything. I mean, I didn't spend any money. She said, "You just make me sick," and that was her response. And so it's you can get in trouble trying to keep up with the person. You don't know how they obtain their things. I didn't pay a dime. So that's a lesson that everyone can learn. You don't never know how people can obtain their things. And for me, I didn't pay one penny. So I wanted to share that person's story. So let's continue on. So the next slide, the next topic. So what is the truth about keeping up with the Joneses? My listeners, the truth is when individuals are trying to impress and outdo the Joneses, they are unaware that the Joneses could possibly be living beyond their means. This sentence is worth repeating. The truth is when individuals are trying to impress and outdo the Joneses, they are unaware that the Joneses could probably be living beyond their means. What does that mean? That means that the Joneses are living from paycheck to paycheck, trying to keep their heads up above the water. So if you are struggling to keep up with your neighbor, welcome to your neighbor's club. According to a recent survey on December 2022 by payments.com and Lending Club, 2/3 of Americans, which is roughly 64%, are living from paycheck to paycheck. That's an additional 9.3 million people from 2021. What's surprising, my listeners, is that from the 9.3 million people, 8 million of those Americans earn $100,000 a year. Now, listeners, these are high wage earners strung out on debt. Now, viewers, do you think the Joneses would tell you that they are in debt and living from paycheck to paycheck so they can maintain their high profile status and be seen as the pillar of the community? I don't think so. The Joneses will never confide this information to you. Never. Now let that sink in. So what are the drawbacks of keeping up with the Joneses? My listeners, keeping up with the Joneses is not the way we should live. There are so many drawbacks. First, Jealousy creeps in, and people want what others have. We should not be in competition with one another. The only way some individuals feel successful is when they can maintain or outdo their neighbor's lifestyle. They appear to have lost their own identity. Sadly, some individuals neglect their own values and sacrifice their happiness to be like someone else. My listeners, it's miserable being a fake. You must pretend you have so much money. You may have to work 2 full-time jobs just to keep up. Spending money frivolously on material possessions that are not needed will drag down your ability to manage your finances. Keeping up with the Joneses means you must continuously change up with the style and fads. Now, viewers, styles and fads change so fast. They change by seasons, years, months, etc. This also includes the upgrades in your home. You must throw out the old and buy what's new. What a waste of money, my listeners. Credit card debt will take a toll on your finances. You will have literally little or no savings at all. No money is available to handle emergencies. If you have children, no funds will be available to pay for college expenses. Your life will be filled with stress, and this can take a toll on your health too. You will encounter many sleepless nights trying to figure out how to handle the debts. My. If you lose your job, you'll be unable to maintain your lifestyle and lose those possessions. You could eventually lose everything trying to keep up with the Joneses. Our listeners, have you ever thought about retirement? Well, if you continue trying to keep up with the Joneses, you will be working a mighty long time. The Joneses won't be available to help you out because they're struggling too, and probably just as stressed out as you are. So as you can see, my listeners, keeping up with the Joneses costs a lot of money. You will end up broke and living a life filled with stress, trying to impress other people. Is it really worth it? Think about it. A lot of pressure to live under. Our listeners, don't look to others to determine whether you are successful. The person you are looking at may be flat broke. Now, I'm going to say this statement. Let that sink in. The person you are looking at may be flat broke, trying to impress, trying to pretend they have money and don't. Breaking the cycle. Breaking the cycle of keeping up with the Joneses. So, get your ass, how do you break the cycle of keeping up with the Joneses? First, my listeners, We should stop trying to impress others and think about what's important. Don't allow the advertisements and posts from social media dictate what you should purchase and how you should live your life and fulfill your dreams. If your family and friends are buying expensive cars and luxurious homes, congratulate them and be content with what you have. Remember, you are following your dreams and not chasing after the aspirations of other people. Set financial goals that matters most to you. It's okay to be average. There's nothing wrong with being average. It's not a sin. Be comfortable in your own skin. Just be you. Don't pretend to be something that you are not. It's imperative that we live within our means. Utilize a budget. That's so important. Let me say that point again. Utilize a budget. Save at least 10% of your income. And if you can save more, please save more. Have an emergency fund that will cover expenses from 6 months to 1 year. Cut back on spending. Get out of debt. Plan, plan, plan. Stop looking at what your neighbor and friends are buying. Your validation does not come from other people. Stay focused on your financial plans so you will be able to handle all the emergencies and uncertainties that lay ahead. My listeners, remember the words from Apostle Paul. Be content, whether you have little or a lot. It doesn't matter. Learn to manage what you have. It's not how much money you make. It's what you do with what you make. Material possessions will not bring happiness. King Solomon stated in Ecclesiastes, the 2nd chapter and 11th verse, that it's all vanity. Place your trust in God Almighty. Live a life that is pleasing to God and keep your eyes off the Joneses. And this lesson, I should say, this lesson will conclude the money management series. Thank you, my viewers, for tuning in to Essential Inspirational Highlights. I am your host, Sister Jamie. I will be back in 2 weeks on Friday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Have a good evening.